Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Ganarallava Girivaradham Jaya Gopi Ganarallava Girivaradham Jaya Gopi Ganarallava Girivaradham Hari Jaya Gopi Ganarallava Girivaradham Yashodanandana Brajalanandana Yashodanandana Brajalanandana Yashodanandana Brajalanandana Yashodanandana Brajalanandana Yamuna Tera Vanaka 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 Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Jaya Gopi Ganarallava Girivaradham Hari Jaya Gopi Ganarallava Girivaradham Jaya Gopi Ganarallava Girivaradham Hari Jaya Gopi Ganarallava Girivaradham Yashodanandana Brajalanandana Yashodanandana Brajalanandana Yashodanandana Brajalanandana Yamuna Tera Vanaka Yamuna Tera Vanaka Yamuna Tera Vanaka Yamuna Tera Vanaka Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Jaya Gopi Ganarallava Girivaradham Hari Jaya Gopi Ganarallava Girivaradham Jaya Gopi Ganarallava Girivaradham Hari Jaya Gopi Ganarallava Vishnupada Paramahamsa Gurugacchaya aśvatthaṁ Shishamachila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Gurugacchaya aśvatthaṁ Shishamachila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Sangha. अनंत कृष्ण वृंद से गौश विश्व की जाय मातृ धाम की जाय जगन्नापुरी धाम की जाय तुलसी महारानी भक्ति देवी की जाय गंगा यमुनी देवी की जाय हरि नाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जाय श्री श्री गौरीताय की जाय श्री श्री कृष्ण बलराम की जाय श्री राधा श्याम सुंदर की जाय गौ प्रेम नंदे हरि हरि बोल समवेत भक्त वृंद की जाय all glories to the Assembled devotees, all glories to the Assembled devotees. All glories to Sri and Sri Gauranga or Vrindavan Bhagavad Gita as it is. 15th chapter, the Yoga of the Supreme Person, in Sanskrit known as Purushottam Yoga. We are very fortunate to be in Vrindavan Dham, where Krishna is performing his eternal pastimes, and it is the most auspicious time of Purushottam Mass. So Purushottam Mass, the month of Purushottam of the Supreme Lord, which comes every almost 3 years, every 2 years and 8 months. And so we are living in the Lord's holy place, Vrindavan Dham. So the Lord's holy place can also be known, as Purushottam Dham. Not only Jagannath Puri, but even since we are addressing Krishna as Lila Purushottam, who is performing wonderful pastimes. So his Dham is also known as Purushottam Dham, the abode of the Supreme Lord, Vrindavan Dham. We are in Purushottam Dham, Vrindavan Dham, in Purushottam Mass, reading from the Bhagavad Gita. The 15th chapter, Bhagavan Sri Krishna, Lila Purushottam. 15th chapter, first verse. śrī-bhagavān uvāca ūrdhva-mūlam adhaḥ-śākham aśvatthaṁ prāhur avyayam chandāṁsi yasya parṇāni yastam Vedas veda-vit. So we read the word for word. śrī-bhagavān ūvāca, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said, ūrdhva-mūlam, with roots above, adhaḥ, downwards, śākham, branches, aśvatthaṁ, a banyan tree, prāhur is said, avyayam, eternal, chandāṁsi, the Vedic hymns, yasya, of which, parṇāni, the leaves, anyone who, tam, that, veda, knows, sa, he, veda-vit, the knower of the Vedas. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. Purport. So, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Of course, yesterday also that verse was discussed in the purport, but as in the scriptures many times you see that to emphasize a point that some things are said more than one time, 2 times or 3 times, even usually 3 times. Just like, for example, what is the Yuga Dharma, the chanting of the holy name. So this famous verse explaining that Hare Nama eva kevalam, Kula nastyeva gatiranyata. That in the age of Kali, the only way to get liberation, that is the chanting of the holy names. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. So sometimes in order to emphasize, we may repeat things more than one time. And of the absolute truth, there's no harm in reading the purport again. And so, yes, and we should not think, oh, we already heard it yesterday. So, but I'm sure most of the devotees, they will not remember the purport from yesterday. And even those who are highly advanced, they will relish the purport again and again. They can read again and again. So we'll start and we'll speak in between also. After the discussion of the importance of Bhakti Yoga, one may question, what about the Vedas? It is explained in this chapter that the purpose of Vedic study is to understand Krishna. Therefore, one who is in Krishna consciousness, who is engaged in devotional service, already knows the Vedas. The entanglement of this material world is compared here to a banyan tree. For one who is engaged in fruitive activities, there is no end to the banyan tree. He wanders from one branch to another, to another, to another. The tree of this material world has no end. And for one who is attached to this tree, there is no possibility of liberation. The Vedic hymns meant for elevating oneself are called the leaves of this tree. The tree's roots grow upward because they begin from where Brahma is located. One can understand this indestructible tree of illusion, then one can get out of it. So we'll chant the Mangala Charan and then we will continue discussing the various points of this verse and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Guran Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakan Vidamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Brishavanu Devi Prana Mani Hari Priya Vanchakalpa Turubhascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Paritanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivajari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. śrī-bhagavān uvāca. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said. So already here, since we are members of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then by his mercy, the 6 Goswamis have actually revealed the intentions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with Kali Yuga Avatar. He is also known as Purushottam. There are 3 Purushottam: Maryada Purushottam Ram, Lila Purushottam Krishna, and Prem Purushottam Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, Purushottam, the Supreme Lord, is speaking. So, we belong to the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. And that knowledge has been brought down in disciplic succession. And it is mentioned in the 4th chapter, Krishna speaking to Arjuna. Evam parampara pratamimara rajaso vidu. So since time immemorial, this knowledge, this little knowledge has been given by the will of the Lord. Krishna is Adi Purush, the original person, is Purushottam. So is addressed as Bhagavan, who is possessing all opulences, especially 6 are mentioned. Sara Aishwarya Purna, Bhagavan, is full of, ultimately has unlimited opulences, but 6 are mentioned. So he's full of knowledge. Most beautiful person. So Gyan, Saundarya, and then opulence, Aishwarya, and then Virya, strength. And then also there is the tyag or renunciation. Although Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is the source of everything, everything belongs to him. And he's performing his pastimes, especially when you speak about Lila Purushottam, Krishna is performing his most wonderful pastimes in Braj, Lila Purushottam Krishna. And although he's dancing with millions of gopis, but at one point, so that will be discussed also, that is discussed in the Bhagavatam for the beginning of Kartik Sharad Purnima. Actually, the end of this Ashwin Maas, the last day is known as Purnima. So this Ashwin Maas and Purushottam Maas is in between the Ashwin Maas. And there are 6 seasons in Bharatvarsha in India, whereas in other places in the West, there are 4 seasons only. But usually where there is a rainy season, especially in India also, then there are two more seasons. One is now, which is after the rainy season. It is Sharad Ritu, and then there's Hemanta Ritu, that is autumn, but before that is Sharad, which is auspicious, which is known then also then as Sharad Purnima. And we start our vow on this day. So that is the greatest form of renunciation that can be explained. We can see in this material world, people, they are attached to this material world, to their own body, to their wealth, to their family, especially then to the beloved wife, or even if they're not married, the beloved. And to give that up is not so easy. But Krishna easily left all the gopis. Of course, it is mentioned Radharani was there also, and he followed her, and they wanted to be together, but then some transcendental pride was there for various reasons. Then the pastimes are performed, and then he left her also, just showing his opulence. So the Lord is addressed in many ways, and so Bhagavan, as explained, means the Supreme Lord, as explained here. And but on the pastime of Purushottam month, the month which was known before as Mal Mas or Adhik Mas, so didn't have a proper name because it is a leap month, the extra month, so that that month was not so happy, and then that month was then approaching Vishnu and crying. Vishnu brought her to Lila Purushottam Krishna in Golok. Not in Vaikuntha to Vishnu. He was there, she was there with Vishnu, but then she went to Golok. Lila Purushottam Krishna in Braj, not in Dwarka, not in Matra. So śrī-bhagavān, that refers actually here to Krishna, who's speaking the Bhagavad Gita before the battle between the Kauravas and the Pandavas. Whereas Krishna is mostly addressed in Braj as śrī-bhagavān, and only Krishna in Braj and Krishna Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, who is no different from Radha Krishna, they are addressed as śrī-bhagavān, as mentioned in the Bhagavatam also. Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. So śrī-bhagavān tu, certainly that is Krishna. And that verse is known as Parishabhasya Sutra, to be remembered throughout the Bhagavatam. For the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, the goal is not to go to Matra or to Dwarka, but to go to Golok Vrindavan. At the same time, Krishna in Matra or Krishna in Dwarka is not different from Krishna, but at the same time there's a difference also. Prabhupada explains, Matureshu Dvakarisht is a bhav expansion. Also Krishna, but a different mood is there. In Braj it is very sweet. In Matra Dwarka there's some aishwarya there, some more opulence is there. So that Krishna, Dwarkadish Krishna, so speaking here to Arjuna, his devotee, in this material world, not in the spiritual realm, in this world. Actually, Prabhupada has explained that Arjuna, to whom he's speaking, is his personal associate of Krishna in this material world. But this form of Arjuna is not there, as we know, as a Kshatriya and 4 brothers. That form is not there in the spiritual world. Golok, or not even Matra or Dwarka. But that form of Arjuna, his original form is also in Braj. And there he has actually 2 forms. One is as Arjun Saka, also known as Arjun, is a cowboy, friend of Krishna. At the same time, the second form he has there in Braj, that is as Arjunya Gopi, that has been revealed by the Ramananda Roy, and Ramananda Roy is the combination of also different personalities like Vishaka. So this is all inconceivable to the materialistic person. Only the devotees who are engaged in devotional service under the direction of the spiritual master, they can understand something. And the more one is advanced, the more one can understand. And now regarding, the verse, Krishna himself is saying, it is said there's an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. Also something very unusual, which Krishna is saying here. And again, materialistic people, they cannot understand how there is a tree which has its roots upwards and the branches down. That's not possible. It's a kind of myth. But the true purpose of faith, the faithful, when the mercy of the spiritual master, they can understand that it is the absolute truth. And the one who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. In other words, of the material world. And so we can see this in this material world. So the tree is there, and the tree next to the river or next to the lake, there's a tree there, and then you can see the reflection of the tree in the water. and that is upward down. That is, we can see in this material world. And so the example is to show that this material world is simply a reflection of the spiritual world. So everything in this material world is temporary, whereas in the spiritual world, everything is eternal. So there are trees in the spiritual world, and therefore there are trees here. But these are just a perverted reflection, whatever is existing here, and it is temporary, and it's not complete and perfect. So one who can clearly understand that most of the spiritual masters don't know what the Vedas. Veda means knowledge. Veda, the knowledge, is no different from Krishna. Krishna is the source of everything. And his personality is there. Satchidananda Sarup. Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sarup means the form or Vigraha. Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha. Parameshwar Krishna, as told by Lord Brahma in the Brahma Samhita. So Krishna is the supreme controller. Param Ishwar, Parameshwar, Adi Purush, the original person, Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So his form is eternal, Sat, Chit, full of knowledge, Anand and bliss. And so the internal energy is there, so the Supreme Lord is there, and there are so many expansions of the Supreme Lord, but is the Mool Roop, the original form. Ete Cham Sakala Pumsam. All the other forms of the Supreme Lord, the expansions of that Krishna in Braj. And then the unlimited energies are there. The Mool Shakti, main energy is the Shrimati Radharani, who is the embodiment of the pleasure potency, Hilarini Shakti. And then for the existence, Sat, the embodiment of that is Balaram, the first expansion of Krishna. And so Krishna himself is Samvit Shakti, the embodiment of the knowledge. So it's the source of all knowledge. Of course, it's the source of all bliss, but then the embodiment of that bliss, that is Shrimati Radharani, the pleasure potency. No different from Krishna, but there's a difference there also. So Krishna is giving this knowledge. And as we know, in this material world, first is giving the knowledge to Lord Brahma. And then Lord Brahma gave to many of his disciples, the foremost of them in our Sampradaya is, of course, Narada Muni, who then spoke to Vyasadeva. And then, of course, Krishna spoke to other personalities, and through his expansion, 100 expansion, through Narayan to Lakshmi Devi, and then other great personalities. And another special form of the Lord, Lord Shiva, directly not different from the Lord, but again, there is a difference there. And Shiva is not Vishnu Tattva, is not the ultimate personality of Godhead, but so it's a special category, Shiva Tattva. So he gave this knowledge to Shiva also, and then the knowledge was handed down in the cyclic succession. And then in this our Sampradaya, then of course Mahaprabhu, he has come, and so he has given that knowledge, and he has given the Yugadharma, the chanting of the holy names, and by which we can come to the highest stage of pure devotional service and worship Krishna in Braj, with loving sentiments, following the eternal associates of Krishna. And so the association of the advanced devotees, one can understand to some extent the absolute truth. But to fully understand the absolute truth is not possible, because the absolute truth is unlimited. Krishna is unlimited. But to some extent we can understand. And so one who knows Krishna, he knows everything, because Krishna is the source of everything. But the devotee may not know all the details of Krishna's creation, because creation of Krishna is unlimited. The spiritual realm and even the material realm. So the living entity is completely insignificant. This part, the living entities, as explained in this 15th chapter, text number. My bhavamsa jivaloke jivabhuta sanatana. The living entities are my part and parcels. Same quality as Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha. But Krishna is unlimited and the living entity is limited. So therefore the knowledge of the devotees, of the pure devotee, is limited. Cannot be unlimited. But the pure devotee has love for Krishna. And ultimately this is required to love Krishna. But in order to come to the platform of loving Krishna, first we have to understand clearly Krishna is the Supreme Lord and that we are infinitesimal spiritual beings completely apart from the gross and subtle body. And then we have to engage in loving devotional service. And then slowly but surely we can realize the subject matter. In the beginning there's knowledge, and by engaging in devotional service we can get realizations, vigyan. The Vedic literatures are very vast, and to study all of them for a normal person is not possible. Therefore, Vyasadeva, he wrote the essence in a few words. Few words is still a lot, and that is known as Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra, also known as Shariraka. That is the essence of the four Vedas. Veda was one, was divided in four by Veda-Vyas. And again, he compiled the Vedanta Sutra. So for the followers of the Vedas to understand more easily the import of the Vedic literatures. And that is divided in three. Sambandha, Abhideya, Yojan Gyan. There are actually four parts of the Vedanta Sutra. The first is about Sambandha Gyan. The second and the third is Sambandha Abhideya, the process by which we can realize the subject matter, engagement in devotional service. And then one get practical realizations, and then one can come to the highest level of prayojan. That is the necessity to love Krishna. So, Prabhupada is explaining here that after the discussion up to this 15th chapter, so he's saying that one may question, what about the Vedas? So in this chapter, Prabhupada is writing that the purpose of Vedic study is to understand Krishna. The purpose of the Vedic study is to understand Krishna. If one does not understand Krishna, he has not really studied the Vedas properly or not under the proper guidance. And we can see many persons are studying the Vedas. Vivedi, Trivedi, Chaturvedi. Even the titles are still there in India. Some person is known as Dvivedi. Means they're from Brahmana family and they were studying two of the Vedas. And some are Trivedi. They studied three of the Vedas, and some are Chaturvedi. They studied the four Vedas. Yes, but then these persons, they do not understand that we have to serve Krishna without material motivations, simply for Krishna's pleasure. So they've not really understood the purpose of Vedic study. And you can see in Bharatvarsha in India, so many people are there. They are studying the Vedas, they are studying the scriptures, but they are not serving directly Krishna or the Supreme Lord. But then somebody who is engaging in devotional service, it is understood that he knows the Vedas. Maybe he has not so much knowledge about the four Vedas, even Vedanta Sutra, but because he has come in the association of a pure devotee, then the essence he has received from the spiritual master. And then he can quickly advance in spiritual life, especially by chanting also the holy names, because simply knowledge is not enough. But in the age of Kali, one has to chant the holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. So by the mercy of the Sadhguru, the realized spiritual master, one can quickly understand the purpose of this Krishna consciousness, and one can advance very nicely in devotional service. And the second paragraph, so Prabhupada is explaining about this material world, and so it is compared to a banyan tree which is upside down. Why upside down? Because it is perverted reflection of the spiritual world, and there are many trees, wonderful trees known as kalpa vriksha trees. So vriksha means also tree, that is in Sanskrit. Different names for tree, taru, kalpa, the vriksha, taru, and so on, druma. So the trees are there in the spiritual world, beautiful trees, and it is mentioned from these trees in the spiritual world, whatever you want, you can get from the trees. And one of our acharyas in our disciplic succession, the spiritual master of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Madhavendra Puri, it is mentioned, is a kalpa vriksha tree in the spiritual world. So, and he can give whatever one wants, and he can give pure devotional service in the different mellows, not only Shanta, but then also Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. And Prabhupada is actually explaining about this, because it is the essence for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas to realize one's relationship with Krishna in one of the 5 mellows in Braj, not in Vaikuntha, not in Dwarka. And so Prabhupada has specifically mentioned that. So even the trees there, although they seem to be in Shantaras, because trees, they're there and they're giving fruits. Of course, if necessary, they can move from one place to another place. If necessary, they can talk also. But usually they do not. But they are serving Krishna, and there's a loving exchange with Krishna there. But they have sentiments for Krishna, loving sentiments, and they want to give the fruit. So the seva bhav is there. And in the Kunja, when Krishna performs his pastimes with the gopis, it is a little intimate, which you do not have to describe here. First, we have to understand clearly that Krishna is God, but then later on one can hear about Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, like the Rasa Lila. So he also has this sentiment, therefore he can give that. So that only the devotees, they can understand, who have been engaged in devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master. So because the trees are there in the spiritual world, therefore there are trees here also. And so the comparison is given here in this material world of a tree, banyan tree, which is also actually known as a holy tree. The banyan tree is a holy tree. And so this tree is very special. So the roots are there in the ground. And then it is, it can become very, very big, this tree. And as long branches are even done, there are more roots then coming from the branches and going down. It is an amazing tree. In Calcutta, I don't know if the tree is still there, there was a huge tree extending for many hundreds of meters with the branches from all sides. And and as explained, if it is next to the lake or river, then in the reflection of the water, you can see the trees upside down. So similarly, in the material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world, and there are many activities there. Therefore, it is explained here that in this material world, the tree is upside down. Everything is upside down in the material world. Ultimately, if Krishna is not in the center, and so it is mentioned, that will be explained also in the next verses also more. And so Prabhupada is explaining also that that in the material world, so the people, they are wandering in this material world. So then it is explaining just as one, for example, the monkeys are there, they like to be the trees, they are jumping from one tree to another tree, from one branch to another branch if the tree is big, like the banyan tree. So Prabhupada is explaining the person in this material world engaged in fruitive activities, so is just wandering from one branch to another branch. Those who are surrendering to Krishna, especially through the medium of the spiritual master, he can become free from this entanglement in this material world. Otherwise, there's no possibility of liberation. And so the example again is very nice of the tree, because there are many branches and many roots are there. So these are very bewildering. And to get out is difficult. So even this big tree I was explaining there in Calcutta, so this is all bewildering, and to get out, so sometimes for somebody who is, for example, a child, he may get lost in that. So, but if one is under the guidance of the Gurujan, the spiritual master, or the parents, then one can become free from this entanglement. And so it is mentioned that the roots are going, who is the secondary creator, who has created this material, the different forms of in this material world of the human beings, the animals, and so on. So is the secondary creator, inspired by the Supreme Lord. So in one sense, I mean, the devotees are not so much interested in the tree. Of course, the banyan tree is very auspicious. It is mentioned some trees are auspicious in the material world, and other trees are not so auspicious. And then the ashok tree and the mango tree is auspicious. Those trees who are giving fruits, they're considered auspicious. Whereas others, the trees who are not giving much shade, who have thorns also, they are not considered so auspicious. So then further on, Prabhupada is explaining in the third paragraph, this process of extrication should be understood. In the previous chapter, it has been explained that there are many processes by which to get out of the material entanglement. And up to the 13th chapter, we had seen that devotional service to the Supreme Lord is the best way. Now, the basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activities and attachment to the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The process of breaking attachment to the material world is discussed in the beginning of this chapter. The root of this material existence grows upward. This means that it begins from the total material substance, from the topmost planet of the universe. From there, the whole universe is expanded with so many branches representing the various planetary systems. The fruits represents the results of the living entities' activities, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. So here the main point in that paragraph is one has to become attached to Krishna. So that is the basic principle of devotional service, has to become attached to Krishna and detached from the material world. And there's no other way of becoming detached from the material world except if one is becoming attached to Krishna by engaging in devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master. There's no other way. Some Mayavadis are there, they will just try to be detached from this world, and they want to become one with the absolute truth. So this way they have they have detachment. They may become detached if they become attached even to the impersonal aspect of the absolute truth, the Brahman. But that is not the ultimate liberation, merging in the absolute truth. And then it is like a sleeping state. So that is not at all desired by the devotees. But the devotees, they are desiring to be engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So here another important point, the fruits represents the results of the living entities' activities, namely religion, economic development, sense purification, and liberation. When one is in this world, one has to accept the Vedic literatures and follow dharma, religion. And then one can actually also get some economic development, and by doing that, some sense purification may be there. Because to immediately be fully engaged in devotional service is not possible. But we have to act according to one's ability and according to Varna ashram. One has to be in one Varna and one ashram. And then gradually one can become free from this material entanglement by following dharma. And the highest dharma is to surrender to Krishna. And dharma, the another meaning is not only religion, but it refers to the intrinsic nature of the living entity. And what is the intrinsic nature of the living entity? That is service to Krishna. That real religion. That is paradharma, sanatana dharma, nitya dharma, the eternal religion. Whereas any other kind of religion that is known as namitika dharma, that is only temporary. Even like the Hindu, the Muslim religion, the Christian religion, because they're not talking about the Supreme Person and giving no information of the Supreme Lord and how to practically engage in loving exchange. So therefore it is temporary. Only some vague explanation is there about God and that we are not this body, we are soul, and we belong to God. But there's no vivid description of Krishna's form and what he's doing and how we can become perfect. So it is actually only for the beginners, and therefore it is known as Namitika Dharma. It is temporary, but ultimately one has to come to Sanatana Dharma in order to become liberated. So, but if one is already doing some kind of religion, then one can live happily in this world, and then ultimately there's a chance of getting liberated. In the next paragraph, now there's no already experience in this world of a tree situated with its branches down and roots upward. But there's such a thing. The tree can be found beside a reservoir of water. We can see that the trees on the bank reflect upon the water with the branches down and roots up. In other words, the tree of this material world is only a reflection of the real tree of the spiritual world. This reflection of the spiritual world is situated on desire, just as a tree's reflection is situated on water. Desire is the cause of things being situated in this reflected material light. One who wants to get out of this material existence must know this tree thoroughly through analytical study. Then he can cut off his relationship with it. So the important point is desire. The living entity is here by his own desire in this material world. We have a little independence. We can choose to serve Krishna or be independent of Krishna. A little desire is there, little independence. So those who are intelligent, they will choose to serve Krishna. Those who are not so intelligent, they try to be independent. And then in this material world, and then so many desires and so many entanglements are there. And to get out of this material world, again, desire is most important. You must desire to get out of this material world. You must desire to go to the spiritual world. And by developing the desire, then you can advance in spiritual life. So desire is important, but it has to be spiritual desire. And so according to desire of the spiritual master, under his instruction, then you will know what is Krishna's desire. Anukulina Krishna Anushilanam Bhakti Ruttamam, that is Uttam Bhakti. And Yabilashita Sunyam Jnana Karma Navritam Anukulina Krishna Anushilanam Bhakti Ruttamam. So Uttam Bhakti is to do what Krishna wants. Anushilanam. Anukul Bhav, do favorable devotional service as Krishna wants, not what you want to do. Of course, we may have some desire and then Krishna may accept that. But we have to try to find out what Krishna wants from us. So that we will come to know from the spiritual master. So desire is very important. So at every second we have the choice to desire. So every second we have the choice either to surrender to Krishna or to be in Maya. Every second. One time Prabhupada was sitting on a Vyasa-san and he was explaining, every second you can desire. You go left towards Krishna. You go right towards Maya. So we have to, every second practically we have to desire, we have to choose to surrender to Krishna. So if our desire is strong, our determination is strong, then we can be properly situated on the transcendental plane. Okay, the last paragraph. This tree, being the reflection of the real tree, is an exact replica. Everything is there in the spiritual world. The impersonalists take a Brahman to be the root of this material tree, and from the root, according to Sankhya philosophy, come Prakriti, Purush, then the three gunas, then the five gross elements, Panchamahabhut, then the 10 senses, the Sendriya mind, etc. And this way they divide up the whole material world into 25 elements. If Brahman is the center of all manifestation, then this material world is a manifestation of the center by 180 degrees. And the other 180 degrees constitute the spiritual world. The material world is a perverted reflection, so the spiritual world must have the same variegatedness, but in reality, the Prakriti is the external energy of the Supreme Lord, and the Purusha is the Supreme Lord himself, and that is explained in Bhagavad Gita. Since this manifestation is material, it is temporary. The reflection is temporary, but for it is sometimes seen and sometimes not seen. But the origin from whence the reflection is reflected is eternal. Material reflection of the reality has to be cut off. When it is said that a person knows the Vedas, it is assumed that he knows how to cut off attachment to this material world. If one knows that process, he actually knows the Vedas. One is attracted by the ritualistic formulas of the Vedas, is attracted by the beautiful green leaves of the tree. It does not exactly know the purpose of the Vedas. The purpose of the Vedas, as explored by the person of Godhead, is to cut down this reflected tree and attain the real tree of the spiritual world. So by engaging in devotional service, under the guidance of the spiritual master, then one is properly situated, and then one can cut down, one can cut this, this attachment to this material world. And then one is properly situated and one can enter the spiritual world. So we stop here. If anyone has any question. Any question?
Hare Krishna, you want some question? You can put your hand up, then unmute and ask the question. Mukunda Datta Prabhu? No. Aśvatthaṁ Prabhu, please ask. Please unmute, Prabhu. And Aśvatthaṁ Prabhu, unmute and ask.
Can I, while the Purushottam month has come in the middle of the Chaturmasya, and we were doing the fasting from the milk, are we continuing with the fast?
Yes, you have to continue with the milk fast. Because this month, Purushottam Mas is within the Ashwin Mas. It's in the middle.
Okay.
So this part of the Ashwin Mas, so you have to fast from milk in this Purushottam Mas also. If the Purushottam Mas is Bhadra Mas, the previous month, then you will have to fast from dahi. If it is in the first month, you have to fast from spinach. But if it is not in Chaturmas, you don't have to follow that. Very simple. Okay, but because it is considered Ashwin Mas, you have to follow that, and one should not take milk, if possible. Unless one is an old man, or one is a child they can take milk, or a sick person, if the doctor says to drink milk, then you can take milk. But usually one will put a little saffron So that is done, no, saffron or haldi, turmeric.
Okay. Okay.
That is, yeah.
And,
Okay, so we
and
should
Prabhu, fasting from the milk means fasting from all the products of the milk as well, like making a porridge out of the milk and everything. We are fasting from everything, or the milk alone is a substance of fast.
Oh, well, yeah. Usually the milk alone, that is to be followed.
Okay.
Usually. And you can mix the
So milk
in
can be taken in
something.
other form.
Yeah. For example, if it is you're in the West and it's a little cold, you want to take an Ayurvedic tea, you can have and put a little milk inside. And if you're taking some porridge, you can put milk inside. No problem.
Okay.
Plain milk should not be taken. Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, there's other devotees, they will not take any milk products. But so different kinds of vows are there. Even for Chaturmas, Prabhupada gave the minimum. But if you see the previous acharyas in Hari Bhakti Vilasananda Goswami has given some other things to avoid doing Chaturmas and also doing Purushottamas. Prabhupada didn't feel it's so necessary, he just gave the minimum. Because when he was in the West, first he had to tell them, the disciples, followers, don't eat meat, don't drink, don't smoke, no gambling, no illicit. That was already a lot for them. And these are sinful activities. Prabhupada was strong, you have to follow that. So he didn't want to tell them many things. Okay, don't take this, don't take that. So he just gave the minimum. But if you see, traditionally, in Vaishnava culture, many more rules and regulations are there.
Right.
But the main thing is you have to follow the spiritual master. And the second, to follow rules and regulations, and that is also necessary, but not too much and not too little. So the spiritual master will give you the rules and regulations, and that is sufficient. That is all right. Okay?
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Okay, another question. Please unmute and ask iPhone. You didn't put your name up today.
Hare Krishna, it's Nagapatni. I just wanted to make Haribol. I hear this a lot. I hear this statement occasionally that because the Westerners were so fallen, Prabhupada didn't give certain instructions and things. But I think what's being missed is the mood of the devotees at the time. We would have died for Prabhupada. Whatever he said, we did with great enthusiasm because of his stature, because of who he was. Anything he asked, we would have done. So I disagree with that statement.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Okay.
Okay, Hare Krishna, do we have any other questions coming up?
Sure, you're free to. I mean, his spiritual master, but according to us, agree, also even amongst the acharyas, but ultimately the main purpose is to serve Krishna. And therefore I've explained that the main thing is to follow the spiritual master and to serve Krishna. And the rules and regulations, they're secondary. And the prime is even mentioned in Padma Purana, that smartavya satatam Vishnu vrismatavya jatu chit sarva vidini the king is the prohibition, we should not forget him. So all the other rules and regulations are subservient to that. So Prabhupada, according to time, place, and circumstances, he gave some instructions, and that is all right. Because of time, place, and circumstances, and he may have some other, but that is my feeling why he did it in a certain way. Maybe he had some other reason why he did it in that way. I don't know exactly. and apparently nobody can say, and it doesn't matter so much, it's not so important. But according to time, place, and circumstances, he did what he did, and it was wonderful. Yes, and so, and if you can see, so his spiritual master did a difference, but ultimately the main thing is that we have to serve Krishna. But then the rules and regulations may be a little different, and that is secondary, and that doesn't matter so much. For whatever reason, and that is not so significant, but then maybe felt it's not so important, maybe also there, to follow the other rules, then maybe there. And that is all right, no problem. But therefore, sometimes, even now, there's some differences, and some Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they don't agree with ISKCON, or they're not doing exactly what it is mentioned in the Hari Bhakti Vilas, and then those in ISKCON, they say, oh, the Gaudiya Mat, just ringing the bell, and instead of appreciating each other, they're criticizing each other. But we should appreciate, and everyone is following their spiritual master, and that should be appreciated. There may be some differences, but they're very small, and everyone is an eternal servant of Krishna. And one who is serving Krishna is a wonderful person. And a devotee seeing everyone is wonderful. And these are just some small differences, and for whatever reason, he just gave some reasons, and they're not always the same. One spiritual master is saying one thing, and the other one is saying something else. But the main thing is the spiritual master is saying that we have to serve Krishna. And even Prabhupada is explained in Nectar of Devotion. Sometimes there's some differences in the instructions of the spiritual master. He himself has written that in the Nectar of Devotion. But basically, the spiritual master is instructing the disciple to worship Krishna. And that is the same. Every spiritual master is telling the disciple to serve Krishna. But how to do, there may be some difference according to time, place, and circumstances. And we should appreciate all the devotees. That's all I'm saying in this regard. Anything else?
Thank you, Prabhu. Are there any other questions coming? Okay.
Prabhu, what is the Prabhu, what is the single most important thing we should do in Purushottam month?
That Bhaktivinoda Thakur has explained. Hari Kirtanam, Hari Smaranam. Hari Kirtanam, you chant the holy names, you glorify Krishna, and then you remember Krishna. That is most important. So then he has explained also, the Brahmanas are there, and then the Paramarthik Vaishnavas are there. We're going for the highest purpose. And then three kinds. Those who are Swanishta, following their own desire, what they have understood we should do. And those who are Paranishta, who follow the instructions of the spiritual master in regards to the Purushottamas or any other devotional service. And then Nirapeksha, Ekantik, Ekanishta, those who are already purified in consciousness and they're fully engaged in Hari Kirtanam and Hari Smaranam. And then they are guided from within and from without the spiritual master, and from within also the purified consciousness. You will understand the desire of the spiritual master, the desire of Krishna, the desire of Mahaprabhu. Hari Kirtanam, then Hari Smaranam, that is most important in Purushottamas. And then some vrata, there are some rules and regulation, and how to increase the chanting, increase some prayers. That is all nice. Instruction of the spiritual master. But most important, we should always be engaged in Hari Kirtanam and Hari Smarana. That is most important during Purushottamas, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And we are following Bhaktivinoda Dhara. The thoughts of Bhaktivinoda Thakur we should follow. And Nama Bhaktivinoda Satyanananda Namini Gaura Shakti Surupaya Rupanuga Varayate. So it's the foremost of the of Rupa Goswami. And it's the manifestation, the Shakti, is the mercy manifestation of Gadadhar Pandit or Srimati Radharani. So it's a Kamala Manjari and Krishna Lila, one of the maid servants of of Srimati Radharani following Rupa Manjari and Lalita Devi. And in Gaurila, following Rupa Goswami and Sarvadar. So we are following that Bhakti Dhara. Hari Kirtanam and Hari.
Excellent.
So Prabhupada didn't say Purushottam Mass for whatever reason. So different opinions may be there, and we don't have to discuss that.
No.
And, yes, so no problem. We just, as Prabhupada always said, we chant and we serve the deities. And actually, those who are fully absorbed in devotional service, they may follow some Purushottam Vrat or not, it doesn't matter much. Those engaged fully in devotional service, they're liberated. The liberated say that they're beyond the rules and regulations. But just in order to teach the common man, they also follow regulations. That's all. To set the example for the common man. But they're beyond.
Right.
So Prabhupada didn't say much about Purushottam Mass. Whereas he gave some instruction for Chatur Mass, not much. And some also for Kartik Mass, a little more. He was saying Damodar Vrat, it is important, ūrdhva-mūlam. So that he has explained a little more. But Purushottam, he didn't specifically say anything.
So, Prabhu, when we hear statements like this, that Kartik is 100 times more important than the other 11 months, and Purushottam month is 1,000 times more important than Kartik month, how should we take these statements? This 1,000 times and 100 times.
Kartik, whatever you do in Kartik is 1,000 times more beneficial than any other time. And if you do in a holy place, like Vrindavan, it is 100 times more beneficial than anywhere else. So 100 times more beneficial if in Vrindavan you do Kartik. And whatever you do in Kartik is 1,000 times more beneficial than any other time. In Purushottam Mass, it is still beneficial than Kartik Mass. So therefore, someday they will give so much importance to Purushottam Mass. Again, the same thing, if you're engaged fully in devotional service, it doesn't matter where you are and which time you're chanting.
Yes.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Those who are not yet advanced, then, it's encouragement for them to be a little more serious during Chatur Mass, during Kartik Mass, during Purushottam Mass. Because you have to be serious and sincere in order to advance. And therefore, these are given Chatur Mass because as a conditioned soul, the tendency to joy is very strong. Even if you're a devotee, you can see. Devotees also, then they have they want to eat pizza, they want to eat pasta, they want to eat chocolate, this and that, which may not be so necessary. So therefore, the Chatur Mass is there, some regulation. So we come to our senses, and then Purushottam Mass, we should be more sincere, Kartik Mass more sincere. And then when we become more sincere, then you can remain more sincere throughout the year.
Okay.
That should be impediment to become more sincere in devotional service. But if one is already very sincere in advance, then it doesn't matter, Kartik, any other month, Purushottam Mass, it doesn't matter. But still he will follow just to set the example and tell them, the disciple, you do this and that. And that may vary according to the spiritual master. Okay?
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu, so much for such wonderful, penetrating explanations.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Grantharakshimar Bhagavad Gita. Shri Prabhupada ki.
Jai. Jai.
Hare Krishna.